Hello, everyone, and how are you today? We are back for another episode of the Wired for Success podcast. As you can see, we are back together. So, Steve is here, I'm here. As I was saying in the other episode, I was saying that I'm by myself. Steve was by himself before, but now we're back together. So, today we are still on this codependency subject. The reason why is because it's so complex and there's so many things attached to it that we want to kind of like um, just hint and prompt at things so that you can see things for yourself and you can do, oh, maybe I need to work more on this. And today we're going to talk about what is not really talked about around parental and teenagers codependency. So just to quickly share a little bit of storytelling, a story. We're going to do a bit of storytelling today, just to share a little bit of an example. There was one young person I remember where I used to work in a foyer for young people uh, who came to register, obviously, to come into the foyer. And at that time, the dad couldn't really manage, you know, his parental duties. And it was really abrupt. So myself as a parent, during the interview with this father who was telling me, yeah, he can't come home anymore. It was such a shock for me. And but on some level, I guess now even I can understand where he was coming from because he didn't feel like he had the tools. So the mother died, recently passed away. He had this teenager who had a disability. He didn't know how to deal with it and have his own life as well. So therefore, it took a little bit of time for them to kind of like merge back. They did merge back and they did continue to have a good relationship after a while, but it took some getting away from it. And the way it came to is was really abrupt. So what I'm talking about here is the fact that codependency on a level could be where people are really close to each other and they really rely on each other. But on the other side of the spectrum, it could be that actually I'm letting go completely. So I'm talking about the parents here, but Steve's gonna give you an example for the teenagers and how they let go as well. So, Steve, you're here?
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be together again as well.
Yes.
It's yeah, I quite enjoy delivering sessions and videos on my own, but I know that sometimes it's like, okay, we're going to go down this road, and I don't have you there to pull me back. So I've got to be careful. So one of the things though that I talked about last week,
Mm,
fairly brief, everything I talked about was kind of either six or seven headers. And so I talked about each header in a fairly short form, and they're all related to the psychology of dependency between teens and parents, between parents
mm,
and teens, depending on which way we're looking. So one of the things I talked about was identity formation. And obviously, the identity of young people, how young people identify with themselves, how they see themselves in the world, and so on, is really important. So during adolescence, young people are beginning to explore their values, explore their beliefs, and explore their social roles, for example. So there's all of those things going on. So they need a level of dependency on their parents or carers whilst they're doing that, because that kind of dependency gives them a fairly stable foundation, somewhere safe, in other words, somewhere safe to explore, somewhere safe to ask questions. If parents exert too much influence, that can kind of stifle the formation of the young person's identity. But on the other extreme, and this is where the example comes in, if the parent isn't giving any direction, any care, any concern, if they're not influencing at all, in fact, they're doing the complete opposite of what we would expect. They're actually pushing the teen away from the family. That is very confusing. It's very dangerous, and it will affect the identity of that teen. So the example I'm talking about is teen's dad and stepmother are looking after the teen. So for some reason, the teen didn't stay with the original mum, and that's okay. That seemed to be working until very shortly before A-level examinations, when the dad was away on duties overseas, and the stepmom decided, I can't cope. I can't cope with this boy. So she sent him away, which meant he couldn't do his A-levels because he'd gone away not just from school, but into another country. So he'd moved from one country to another. So he couldn't study. And that challenged him in such a big way. It was incredible. He did do his A-levels eventually, but couldn't do them at the time he should have done them. There was a year's delay. It challenged all kinds of things he thought about the family. His identity was threatened. So that's an extreme example. But we need to think about those things. They happen. What was it with the stepmom? Why did she feel that she couldn't cope? We need to ask that question. Maybe that stepmom needed some support. I met her and I would say, yeah, she did need some support. She didn't know how to bring up an almost 18-year-old. And she didn't have much support in doing it because dad was often away on duties elsewhere. So she was left at kind of home alone with somebody else's son. And she wasn't very old either. So her life experience was quite limited. So there's loads of things that you can put into the mix. And quite often, this is where we miss things. I have a current client who is aged a little bit over 60 and has two very young children, and his wife died a year ago. He feels that he doesn't have the skills necessary to look after the two children. He's also worried about the two children because of his age. By the time they're teens, he's going to be 70. There's all kinds of things going on up here. So he too needs support. It's not only the kids that need the support. Okay, these are very young children. They're not close to adolescence at the moment. But we need to look beyond the surface. And parents, and this is what I would say now to any parents listening, if you feel unsure, if you feel that you don't know what you're doing, that you don't know how to support the identity formation of your adolescents, for example, or if you don't know whether your parenting style is creating too much dependency or not, then drop patience or I a message. Tell us. Private messages are fine. We'll always reply. You don't have to put a message in the comments where the world can see it. So do get in touch. So patience, I put a lot of stuff into that. I know how
this
I'm
is
aware of that.
it was supposed to be one story, Steve.
I
Okay.
know. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, and I was thinking of another story. So codependency is also sometimes, so obviously it depends of the background, your cultural background, it depends of how you were brought up. For many families, I would say in the world, because I'm gonna generalize it, um, the children have to do chores, and sometimes it's over the chores. So it's not just chores, it's taking over actual parental roles. So the first child is often the one who has to look after a sibling. Sometimes, and in certain cultures, if you are a woman, a girl, you have to look after the house as well as your younger sibling, and so on. And I've had one client that was like a recurring client for different reasons. But what she then developed from all of this being a teenager and going into adulthood is that she wants to go away from the family by any means necessary. Therefore, being in a relationship is really important for her, no matter whether it's a healthy or not healthy relationship. She's gone into, so in this idea of she was so dependent, she had to be relied upon by the mom so much that she's now created herself that I need to move away. My only way to move away from this is by going into another place, and I can only leave if I get married. Therefore, I'm gonna go and find a relationship. Now, she's about to get married. The mother is not necessarily happy about that because she's not sure that a daughter will be able to cope. But at the same time, when the situation is gone to a level that whether she marries this person or not, she will be marrying someone. Can you see how dangerous uh, I'm sorry to to be so abrupt even by saying that, but can you see how dangerous codependency really is? So it's not only in the fact that, oh, my son wants to see me every day. It's not only in that side. It's also in the side of like when you are giving a lot of responsibilities to a child and it's not their responsibility, often it will create that. On another case, I could go into another case where the child is in a family where they feel loved, they feel so much, and unfortunately, someone passed away, the dad or the mom. There will be this over need to be again in a family cocoon, and I think I spoke about that before, where where you will feel secure because you feel that you can rely on this person with whom you will create um a new relationship. And it's not necessarily true, but what happens is that because there's this sense of urgency, I need to get this, I need to get that to replace what's missing, you can get into relationships that are not beneficial for you as a teenager. I mean, as a teenager becoming into adulthood. So as I don't know, I want to speak to parent now as well. So we got a lot of messages for you, direct messages for you today. So Steve started, so I'm going to, I've got the message for you, parents. If you realize that what I spoke about or what Steve spoke about is something that you are living or is something that you feel like is going to happen because of the circumstances, it could be anything. The circumstances arrive and you feel like you need to rely a lot more on your child, on your first child or the adult's child, we will say. I mean, adult, the oldest child, um, then I will urge you to contact us. I will urge you to contact us so that at least you can have some strategies into how you're going to cope you yourself with whatever is happening, your situation, and also how can you cope with your family so that there is not codependency setting in your family. And remember, whatever happens with the child that has become the adult now, also has effects on the other siblings in the family. So this is something that you have to look at the knock-on effect of codependency. And I think that's why we are talking so much about this at the moment.
Let's just finish off with something which is a little bit easier to manage, as long as we're aware of it, of course. And that's practical dependency. So when I was a child, let's have a think of an example. Mum, I would like that new pair of football boots, please. They're only 50 quid or whatever they were. No, you can't have it. We don't have any money, or we don't have enough money. Right? Okay, whatever. 6 months later, I still want that pair of football boots. No, we haven't got any money. You'll have to wait for your birthday. But that's in 6 months. Sorry, you'll have to wait for your birthday. So that wasn't really teaching me anything about money. What it was doing was giving me a message. There is no money, there is no money, there is no money. And that kind of locked in a loop in my head. And I wasn't taught about the practicalities of managing the finances. So my parents never said to me, well, we've got this much money coming in each month and we need this much money for the mortgage and blah, blah, blah. I wasn't taught any of that stuff. So I had to learn all of that when I left home, which was quite difficult. And I must admit that I ran into problems more than once because I overspent, because my head said, no, there is no such thing as not enough money. I'm not going to live by that. But it got me into trouble. And that went, I did, okay, that didn't go on for a long time, but it did happen, you know. So I needed help with finances and to understand how they worked and why and what we needed to do and all of that stuff. And it didn't come. So that's, in a way, you could say that I had a lot of practical dependence on my parents for the finances, for example. I depended entirely to be told what we could have and what we couldn't have, what, you know, what was possible. Decision making, my parents made all the decisions, and we weren't encouraged to get involved in those. It wasn't seen as our domain. So we need to have a think about it. Any parents listen to this now. What are the practical things that you could perhaps change slightly that might make it easier for the young people around you, that might teach them a few things about finances, for example? Have a think about it, because there are a lot of practical things that we could quite easily change. And it change for the better sometimes that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. I like this, and I would add that um being aware of your language is really important as well. The language that you use.
Absolutely. It is. Okay, that's enough from me for today. But
Well, thank you
no,
so much.
sorry, Patience. I was just going to say, but remember, everybody, leave a message. If you need to leave a message, do so. Don't worry about leaving a public message if you feel that it needs to stay private. Keep it private. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.